The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
Bringing things, as I said, into symbiosis, going for a clean energy economy, but maybe rescuing or delivering a lot of value in rural America, again, absolutely motivates me. And as you know, we've had offline conversations. I'm kind of reorganizing my life for this. I think it's real. We have to solve some of the trouble spots, but we can figure it out, and we are.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Welcome to a special live interview on the Clean Power Hour. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Today on the Clean Power Hour, the Solar Farm Summit. My guest is Dan French. He is the founder of this lovely event, July 8, 9, and 10 in Chicago. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thanks, Tim. Pleasure to be here. Privilege.
And a shout out to Suncast. We're in the media zone here at the Midwest Solar Expo in Chicago as well. So thank you, Suncast and Nico Johnson. It's truly a pleasure working with Nico. So Dan, this is a long time in the coming. I got to know you when you were still doing brownfield solar, and you pivoted and are now an expert and consultant and organizer in the agrivoltaic space, a space that is near and dear to my heart. But give our listeners a little background on yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, Dan French, recovering attorney, old dirt lawyer. I was in-house at British Petroleum when we blew up the Gulf of Mexico, still making amends for that, and got really excited when I saw some of the first generation trailblazers like Paul Curran, BQ Energy, which is now with Clean Capital. I think he was the first I saw somebody putting solar panels on landfills, and that was a head slapper. I was like, of course, we're going to go get every landfill in the country. And but it's, landfills, super fun, brownfields is hard. It's the hardest kind of real estate development, redevelopment. Yep. There's actually a lot of bipartisan support on this because the private sector's clearly failed. There's a public role to play. And just got addicted to the market making, bringing the sophisticated things together, bringing the collaborative spirit, all the different stakeholders, all the different credentialed professionals that need to get involved to bring one of these home. Started to do little events just for brownfields that gravitated to solar. Brightfield redevelopment kind of got mainstream. Brownfields is in the IRA. There's a great sweetener. If you're interested in doing some environmental justice work, there's never been a better time to make it pencil.
Indeed.
And a lot of environmental justice community is still waiting for investment. So thrilled to see solar come on in such big demand and fill that gap, and really excited about what I see as the next level of solar, the next level of this land use renaissance, bringing kind of everything in symbiosis, dual use development, agrivoltaics or even ecovoltaics. It's a multifunctional platform. It's not just about harvesting the electrons. There's environmental gains and real agricultural gains. My favorite study, I'll just stop with this. University of Arizona, they did peppers under the panels. They tripled the pepper yields using half the water.
Wow.
In the dryland climates, the science, the productive capacity is just super compelling.
Yeah, I often use the dual use expression. It just rolls off the tongue a little easier. But we're talking about solar farms, which is steel and glass, right? And rows between the panels. And there's plenty of sunlight still hitting the field. And you can grow things. You can grow plants, crops, and you can grow sheep and other livestock. So give our listeners a little taste, though, Dan, of what is the status of agrivoltaics in the U.S. today, if you could just paint a broad stroke picture.
I like to divide it into three buckets, really: crops, critters, and conservation. And working backwards, I think they're strongest in reverse order. So conservation's taking off, particularly in Illinois here. Great conference, by the way, Midwest Solar Expo. Jake, shout out to him and his whole team, in addition to Nico. But here in Illinois, CJ, solar's paying for a lot of prairie restoration. All of a sudden, the pro-pollinator habitat, Illinois jumped to, I think, the top state with hundreds of projects now in the queue. We're just with a little favorable policy, we can plant the right things, native species, beneficial vegetation, and bring the bees and the butterflies back. So conservation is something we well understood going back to Lady Bird Johnson, really stepping on the shoulders of professionals. We know how to do this. And then critters, solar grazing, you mentioned growing sheep, that's also kind of taking off on its own. It really pencils. It can even save money versus lawnmowers. In some places, there's not enough sheep. So that seems to be nascent, but emerging. And then I think the least developed is really the crops bucket, proper cropping under the panels. Some things I mentioned, tomatoes and peppers, a lot of pilot projects out there. But still I would call it the pilot stage. Japan is much further ahead than we are. Europe, I think, their pilot projects are many years ahead of us, but they're doing berries in the Netherlands quite successfully. They're doing hops over the panels in Germany and making better beer. And now they're doing vineyards in France, and they take their wine very seriously in France. And it's, again, bottom line, agricultural gains. So the watts are even maybe just an added benefit, because in drought or even with too much rain, the power of these microclimatic conditions under the panels, we can think about them almost like open air greenhouses. It's maybe something the world really needs on a hotter, more populated planet when everybody seems to be, hungrier and hungrier.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the big picture. Still a lot of room to grow. Yeah.
So crops, critters, and conservation. I love that. That is awesome. So let's talk about the summit, because you are also an innovator in this space. You started the event last year. I got stuck in Dallas, didn't get to attend, but I heard so many wonderful things from attendees. So what inspired you to start the Solar Farm Summit, and what do you hope to achieve?
Bringing the players in the space together. It's people. And thank you for the kind words. I'd run around the country doing a lot of different kinds of market making events, real estate development, Brightfields, and pollinators started to pop up. And then we did apiary. I did an event in California, and John Jacob, there was a Pine Gate project, and they did apiaries, and that blew my mind. And then in Virginia, Virginia Solar Summit we also do. We did a whole grazing session with Lexi Hain, now at Lightsource BP.
Yep.
And that blew my mind. And the whispers in Washington, DOE started to talk about it, started having these conversations, and there's some pioneers. I shouldn't get too much credit. Jordan Macknick at NROW, Greg Barron-Gafford, who I mentioned previously at Arizona. I mean, real big brains who have dove in and shown how this can work. And I just saw the opportunity to try to, leverage my network and my brownfield kind of experience. I know how hard these things can be, but I also know many hands make light work. And if we can get the right big brains in the room, we can scale kind of on the timeline that maybe Mother Earth will require.
I love it. It really is important, though, to bring the different players together so that we can lean in, right? And we can accelerate this phenomenon. As you mentioned, Japan and Europe are further along. In general, in renewable energy, they grabbed onto renewable energy sooner than we did, and now they're grabbing onto agrivoltaics, and land is more of a premium in those places, right? We're swimming in real estate, Dan. It's crazy how much land we crop in corn and beans, and now we're converting a small percentage of that cropland and grazing land and some desert in the Southwest. Okay. It is our responsibility as good stewards, right, to make solar development as environmentally and ecologically friendly as possible. And if we can also make it economic for farmers, well, I think it's a very important play from a perspective of NIMBYism, which is a real phenomenon in rural America, right? A developer, John Carson, shout out to Trajectory Energy Partners, mentioned to me the other day that it's getting twice as expensive and twice as time consuming for him to permit his community solar projects. These are 30-acre solar farms. These are not multi-thousand-acre solar farms, right? There's pushback in rural Illinois against community solar because there is a campaign of fear, uncertainty, and doubt by the fossil industry primarily, but others, right? So anyway, we need to come together. And so I laud you for creating the event. Looking forward to participating this year, being there. So what are some of the highlights? What are you looking forward to at the summit?
Well, USDA is going to be there bigger and stronger this year. Getting really excited about that. There's actually 2 bipartisan bills for agrivoltaics in the U.S. Senate right now. Senator Braun, a Republican from Indiana, teamed up with Heinrich, a Democrat from New Mexico, and introduced their version of a pro-agrivoltaics bill. Tammy Baldwin, a Democrat from Wisconsin, teamed up with Chuck Grassley from Iowa for their own version of a pro-agrivoltaics bill. Not very much money, but sets USDA to the task of, well, here's what agrivoltaics is. Let's research it. Let's make it official. And it looks like, fingers crossed, it's got a really good shot of surviving in this farm bill. So we're leaning into policy at this year's show. Day 2, Tuesday, July 9 is unofficial soil day, solar soils day. There's some great stuff out of Argonne National Labs, which isn't too far away from us, a 5-year study of solar farms in southern Minnesota, which is super compelling science. And then Wednesday will be solar grazing day. You can sit through a whole day full of kind of scaling solar grazing sessions which starts out like we literally borrow the syllabus style from university. I just can't get away from it. So it's like solar grazing 101, and then it builds into, solar grazing 300 level stuff.
Right.
And for practitioners by practitioners, we've given away over 50 farmer and rancher passes this year. So we're trying to nudge industry. We're trying to nudge Washington, but very committed to bringing everybody together. Because kind of as you said, I think the opportunity with agrivoltaics is to make it truly inclusive. We're talking a lot about community benefits, because if we can even just 30-acre pollinator restoration habitat, that will bump yields. We know, we have science that neighborhood gardens will get bumps because there's more bees. So bringing things, as I said, into symbiosis, going for a clean energy economy, but maybe rescuing or delivering a lot of value in rural America, again, absolutely motivates me. And as you know, we've had offline conversations. I'm kind of reorganizing my life for this. I think it's real. We have to solve some of the trouble spots, but we can figure it out, and we are.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 3-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes 3-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. So what are some of the myths about agrivoltaics that you'd like to dispel among energy professionals, but a general audience as well?
That you can't grow anything under the panels. I'm not a botanist, but one of the facts I've learned is that most plants are only using about half of the day's light, even full sun plants. So most of our fruiting and vegetable plants are actually shade tolerant. And I mentioned peppers at the top. They do better. So on a hotter, flatter planet, planet that's we've had a crop failure somewhere in the world, I think every year, almost 20 years in a row or something like that. We're going to need these strategies. It's going to make sense, even if after we invent fusion, Tim, whenever that is. I think we might be doing agrivoltaics just because it makes sense for farming purposes. That's maybe the power of these things, and the local resilience and the microgrid. So, not doing a good job of countering the arguments.
But you're fine.
For developers, I don't think it's that much more expensive. We need to see the proof is in the pudding. So I'm careful to make claims that go too far. But approaching it from the trouble side of the ledger, traditional ground mount solar 1.0, it's experiencing some issues. We've had in Virginia, where we just were last week at the Virginia Solar Summit, hearing a lot of erosion control failures, land use control violations, environmental violations. There was a 6-figure penalty that was announced in the news this morning against a solar developer that I won't name. And America's 400 years of real estate.
And what was that around? Runoff or what?
Runoff? Yep. And it only takes one of those. It doesn't take too many bad apples to build on the AstroTurf that you mentioned before and put a bad taste in people's mouths. So in Virginia, we had an agrivoltaics project that didn't make its approvals. I think we're maybe playing from behind a little bit. And so agrivoltaics, to shorten it, and I've got hundreds of slides I would love to show at another time. I think the problems and the opportunities really do match up. And if I could dispel one thing, it would be the extra costs, because we do need to lead in. And the last thing I'll say is I work with a lot of investors. I've kind of a one foot in capital markets all the time, as also a retired economist. But there was a federal jury in Georgia last year. There was a erosion control failure at a project, 1,000-acre solar farm.
High profile.
Washed out a trophy property. Many have heard about this.
Yep.
It was only $10 or $12 million in actual damages, but the jury added $120-some million in punitive damages. Communities, juries love to punish bad actors, particularly real estate developers. 400 years of real estate booms and busts in America. We know how this happens, and that has sent shockwaves through the investor class because nobody wants to hold a 9-figure loss. That'll come down on appeal, but that'll ruin your portfolio, not just your project. So we've got to start taking this seriously. And if we think about the multifunctionality of agrivoltaics over its life, why wouldn't we be investing these pennies up front to save these pounds?
Yeah. You mentioned Lexi Haynes. She's the founder of the American Solar Grazing Association, ASGA, otherwise known as ASGA. She's been on the show, so check out Lexi Haynes' interviews. And, now she's at BP Lightsource. BP is, I think their aim really is to do all of their projects in agrivoltaics now. And that speaks to the cost effectiveness of agrivoltaics, right? And it's a win-win. It's the developer is creating extra benefits to their projects and providing grazing resources to farmers, to sheep herders, right? And it's a win-win. It's good for the sheep herders, and it's good for the solar developer. So yes, we have to evolve, right? We have to continue to create better technology. You talk about vineyards. Well, you got to jack the solar panels up a ways, right? It's not your standard 5-foot tall tracker, but we have the technology. We just need to mature it to bring down the cost. So anyway, in our last couple minutes together, Dan, what should our listeners know? What else should our listeners know about the summit? Where is it going to be? How do you get there? And what's the website?
Oh, thanks. It's solarfarmsummit.com. And thanks. I would talk all day about agrivoltaics and not mention the show. But it's actually right here down the street, the Lowe's Hotel in Rosemont, Illinois, just outside Chicago. It's a free shuttle distance away from O'Hare Airport. So it's 1 mile. You can if you can get to O'Hare, you can get there. It's also a little easier to drive to than downtown Chicago, a little cheaper. But looking forward to a great show, big expo. A lot of the big brains that I mentioned, and I would just encourage people to dive in. We're really just a community, or I'm trying to build like a community. It's a show, it's a conference, but on our website, you'll find all kinds of links to the real players. You mentioned agrisolar clearing, or you mentioned the American Solar Grazing Association, ASGA. There's something called the Agrisolar Clearinghouse. On our website, solarfarmsummit.com, we have something called the Agrivoltaics Index, which just links to all the amazing things that are out there. Jack's Solar Garden, some of the universities who are doing the work. So really just trying to put a big circle and spotlight around all the good work that's happening in the space. And if you want to come steep in the substance, join us in July here in Chicago, and bring your business cards, because we're serious about the substance of the show. The sessions will be great, but there's also always extra networking at my shows. So great opportunity to come shake hands, meet the real people who are doing this stuff, and see just how real it is.
And are you still looking for exhibitors?
There are some exhibit booths, yes.
Okay.
And always sponsorship we support. And we do still have some free passes for farmers and ranchers as well. There's this discounted student ticket. So we hope it's an affordable show for the quality. Be there.
I love it that you invite landowners to attend for free. That's a great way to engage landowners. We need landowners to be more educated about solar, right? Generally, once landowners learn about solar and the value proposition, they're interested. It's everyone else that becomes a potential challenge, right? Rural communities don't like change, but when change includes other goods, especially things like cropping and growing animals, I think that's going to make it an easier sell.
And even on the downside, we know that future shocks will come. You mentioned growing a lot of corn for ethanol, I think, earlier in our conversation. Almost half the corn crop, 40% of the corn crop every year. And with EVs, the electrification of everything, there's a lot of whispers about what happens when 40% of corn demand goes away. That's millions and millions and millions of acres. It's not all going to become soybeans. And so we may need agrivoltaics either because Mother Earth is coming for us or because ethanol goes away. There's all kinds of reasons why we need more value creation, more revenue opportunities in rural America. And I'm really hopeful that agrivoltaics helps align all these different systems. It's a little complicated. We got a lot to talk about. But the passion is there. The bipartisan interest is there. And if farmers show up and get their hands on it, it's going to happen that much faster because they're some of the smartest polymaths that we have feeding the world.
So
and
true.
This stuff works.
With that, I want to thank Dan French, the founder of the Solar Farm Summit, for joining me on the Clean Power Hour. Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Please give us a rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. Tell a friend about the show. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I love hearing from my listeners. And Dan, let's grow solar and storage. Thanks.
The future is bright. Thank you, sir.
All right. Hey, listeners. This is Tim. I want to give a shout out to all of you. I do this for you twice a week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time. I really appreciate you and what you're all about. You are part and parcel of the energy transition, whether you're an energy professional today or an aspiring energy professional. So thank you. I want to let you know that the Clean Power Hour has launched a listener survey, and it would mean so much to me if you would go to cleanpowerhour.com, click on the About Us link right there on the main navigation. That takes you to the About page, and you'll see a big graphic, Listener Survey. Just click on that graphic, and it takes just a couple of minutes. If you fill out the survey, I will send you a lovely baseball cap with our logo on it. The other thing I want our listeners to know is that this podcast is made possible by corporate sponsors. We have Chin Power Systems, the leading three-phase string inverter manufacturer in North America. So check out CPS America. But we are very actively looking for additional support to make this show work. And you see here our media kit with all the sponsor benefits and statistics about the show. You know, we're dropping 2 episodes a week. We have now over 320,000 downloads on YouTube, and we're getting about 45,000 downloads per month. So this is a great way to bring your brand to our listeners, and our listeners are decision makers in clean energy. This includes project executives, engineers, finance, project management, and many other professionals who are making decisions about and developing, designing, installing, and making possible clean energy projects. So check out cleanpowerhour.com, both our listener survey on the About Us and our media kit, and become a sponsor today. Thank you so much. Let's grow solar and storage. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chinpowersystems.com to find out more.